Welcome to the Gavel. I am Terry Ikumi. The security crisis in the country topped debates in both chambers of the National Assembly. The Green Chamber held a 4-hour executive session and arrived at 11 resolutions, primarily calling on the president to declare a state of emergency in the nation's security sector, while also condemning attacks on security agents and formations across the country. The House also resolved to convene a special security summit to address the security situation in the country. Now, the Red Chamber, on the other hand, had an extensive open session on security, especially the claim by the Niger State governor that Boko Haram had hoisted its flag at Kaure, a village in Niger State, just about 2 hours from the nation's capital. And by the next day, the security checks at the entrance of the National Assembly were intensified. Here's a detailed report. The House of Representatives is asking the president to declare a state of emergency in the security sector. This was part of the 11-point resolution reached by the lawmakers after an executive session that lasted almost 4 hours. The House also resolved to invite the National Security Advisor, Service Chiefs, Inspector General of Police and the Managing Director of NIGECOMSAT to brief on the security situation in the country.
The House reiterates its commitment to the security and corporate existence of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and will therefore accelerate its engagement with stakeholders at a special security summit that is being organized by the House of Representatives. 4, the House urgently invites the NSA, the service chiefs and paramilitary chiefs and the MD of NIGECOMSAT to brief the House on the security situation in the country. 5, considering the security situation, the President should immediately declare a state of emergency in the security sector so as to fast-track all measures to ensure that the restoration of peace in our country. The federal government should ensure the protection of national infrastructure and assets, particularly the Shiroro and Kainji dams in Niger State. 10, the House mandates all its security committees to immediately commence a comprehensive audit of all military and paramilitary assets and arms and ammunition in our armed services and revert back to the House within 4 weeks. 11, that the number of personnel in the police and military falls far short of the required number to effectively secure the country, and the House calls for immediate recruitment to this effect.
While the debate on insecurity in the country held behind closed doors in the House of Representatives, the Senate had an open session. The debate came a day after the Niger State governor raised an alarm that Boko Haram terrorists had taken over a part of the state, hoisting their flag in Kaure village, about 2 hours from the federal capital territory. Senator Smart Adeyemi from the ruling party, with tears in his eyes, appealed to the president to resolve the security crisis in the country.
Today, there are a lot of misgiving, a lot of misinterpretations of what is happening. Some people believe, some people in government are supporting this move. Some people believe, some people sponsor those who are destabilizing our nation within the country. The answer is very simple. We cannot pretend that we are capable of confronting the situation in our hands. America, as powerful as they are, when the pandemic came, got to a point that China had to claim, they came to their rescue. We shouldn't pretend that we needed foreign support now. Let nobody deceive us, Mr. President. A lot of billions of naira have been voted for security services. Nothing is coming out of it. We wouldn't wait until our nation gets bombed. Let us shout and call for foreign support. I am a APC man and I've been supporting my party. But the president should get to know that it has gotten to a point that we who are supporters, who are members of the APC, we can no longer keep quiet. The president must rise to the occasion. You will not see the truth and you are afraid to say it because you will die. We must open, Mr. President. The nation is on fire. The president must know that this is a bad time for our nation. We must look for foreign support to save this nation. This is my position, Mr. President. We must rise to it. They are killing people in the east, in the west, in the south, in the north. We should shut down the National Assembly. Let's shut down. If we cannot save this country, we stay in our homes. Our country is bleeding. People are in poverty. There's no food. People are hungry. Insecurity is threatening us. We cannot pretend. It's better we are not here than to not see that here people are dying. Every day Nigerians are dying. We must rise to the occasion. And so me, Mr. President.
Lawmakers appeared fed up with the vicious killings in different parts of the country and did not seem to be confident in the ability of President Buhari to resolve the security situation.
In this particular Senate, we have seen senator after senator, from Arafa to Alim Dume, to most of our colleagues here who were in the last Senate, spoke about the insecurity in Nigeria and the fact that it will get worse. I'm so sad that all those we predicted are not happening. Mr. President, I don't intend to re-emphasize the fact that any government that cannot protect its citizens, whether it is local government or state or federal, has lost legitimacy. This is time for us to sit up and take the business of securing our people seriously. Mr. President, the situation we found out in our country today is not irreversible. It is that the problem is that we have not been able to pay sufficient attention or take this matter seriously. Sri Lanka, Colombia, Israel, they've gone through this road and they overcame them. So we should not be ashamed to seek support and assistance of such countries to help us. We had COVID-19 in this country in year 2020. Some states were shut down in order to deal with that situation. I think this time has come for a place like Niger State to be completely shut down.
Only recently, Mr. President, we saw Nigeria giving men out on peacekeeping to other countries, when in fact we cannot keep peace in our own. Mr. President, recently, as a parent, we saw 3 students who were slaughtered after being kidnapped. They were sent to school to go and read. Only yesterday, 2 more were slaughtered. What are we doing? The bloodletting is just impossible. But Mr. President, it shows just a few things. 1, the lack of political will to handle insecurity. There is no political will. None of us here can say we know the process that this government intends to use to battle insecurity. And in a country that is so ravaged that we're almost inching towards Syria, we must know what government wants to do about insecurity. Mr. President, the second one is the lack of leadership. Because if there was leadership, we have put together a new set of leaders according to the security outfit, because we said the other ones were not okay. We drove them away. New ones have come. Have we been able to tell them what is expected? And have we given them a timeline on this?
The Global Terrorism Index for the last 5, 6, 7 years has been saying the same thing. But nobody appears to be paying attention to these indicators that shows that we might be entering into the situation we are at present. I think this is where the issue that this Senate needs to confront lies. It is not about reacting to outbursts of happenstance everywhere and all the time. But fundamentally, what are we doing wrongly that makes us to ignore warning signals that has been broadcast to every nation of the world?
While some Nigerians question the ability of President Buhari to address the security crisis, the mover of the motion on the insecurity in Niger State warned against plans to impeach the president.
It is not about impeachment. What is the solution? You and I knows what impeachment is all about. It's another crisis into another crisis. Why do we need that now? What we need is solution. We need this country to come back to where we were in terms of peace.
In the meantime, the Senate has agreed on some steps to tackle the security challenge, which includes asking the Chief of Army Staff and Inspector General of Police to immediately deploy troops to defend troubled communities and urged them to establish permanent military and police base at the axes adjoining Shiroro and Rafi local government areas. Meanwhile, on Thursday, security checks at the entrance of the National Assembly were more intense than normal, causing long queues into the premises. Unconfirmed reports said there was an alleged security threat on the assembly, which necessitated the increased security. Meanwhile, inside one of the hearing rooms of the National Assembly, the Senate Committee on Army held a meeting to discuss the release of funds to the military to fight terrorism. The absence of the Minister of Finance was strongly noted.
If the minister is in town and she refuses to honor this invitation, honestly, or neglect this invitation, honestly, we are not going to take it kindly. While in her state, in Kaduna, today, more than 50 people are still in the hands of captives. If to say her child or her brother or somebody related is among those that are there, I'm sure she will be here.
Nevertheless, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance tried to fill in for the minister, detailing some releases to the military. He explained that 75 billion naira was appropriated and released in 2019, but was quickly countered.
Number 4 there, 2020, 75 billion was appropriated, 74.999, only I think 2 naira was. So almost 100% was released. The current year, 100 billion has been appropriated. We have released 19.7 for the first quarter. Just yesterday, we have released 19.95.
Here is a letter indicating that from the time of the introduction of Operation Lafia Dole, they have a shortfall outstanding of 50 billion. When they attacked Minok, the problem they had there was because they didn't have the communication, they didn't have the cover, they didn't have, in fact, what happened really was that they ran out of ammunition. When they exhausted their ammunition, they had to take cover, they ran away, and they killed 30 of them.
They may require certain funds, but as far as appropriation is concerned, we have released what has been appropriated to them.
The committee did not go much further with the permanent secretary, as they insisted that the finance minister must appear in person before them on the 4th of May to give account of releases to the military for Operation Lafia Dole and the war on terrorism. Following the resolution of the House of Representatives to organize a security summit in May, the Speaker of the House of Representatives has inaugurated a 40-man committee. The committee is expected to come up with solutions to the rising insecurity in the country. Speaking during the inauguration, the Speaker of the House, Femi Gbajabiamila, stated that there is a clear and urgent need to take necessary action across different arms and levels of government to address the security situation in the country. The planned summit is expected to be open to Nigerians.
For the set of this committee to begin to look into ways on how to address and tackle the situation where we find ourselves. And it is in the context of these prevailing realities that the House of Representatives has appointed this special committee to undertake a comprehensive study of the issues and challenges of our national security from the perspective of the legislature. And at the end of it, recommend innovative, practical solutions that can help to relieve us of our present national security and challenges. There is therefore a clear and urgent need to take all necessary actions across the different arms and levels of government to articulate solutions to ensure an effective response to the challenges we face. In doing this, we must recognize the need to proceed with caution and wisdom so that as we respond to existing problems, we do not further compound them or create new difficulties.
Welcome back to the Gavel. Our next report is on electoral matters. Civil society organizations were at the National Assembly to push for quick passage of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. And this was the same stance taken by the INEC chairman when he appeared before a Senate committee. The president of the Senate had earlier in the year promised to facilitate the passage of the new Electoral Act by the end of March, but that did not happen.
The next general election in Nigeria is about 20 months away, and for these civil society groups, time is fast running out for the passage of a new electoral law that will guide the process. The amendment has already scaled first and second reading in both chambers of the National Assembly. This group wants the federal lawmakers to expedite the process.
Reforming the electoral legal framework for credible elections is a top priority. National Assembly must pass the electoral amendment bill now.
The National Assembly must recognize that passing the electoral bill in good time will engender expeditious action by the executive. The speedy enactment of the bill will give the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the legal clarity to adequately plan and efficiently conduct future elections.
The group also lists some priority areas that the National Assembly should pay attention to in the ongoing amendment.
Strengthening the financial and operational independence of Independent National Electoral Commission. Number 2, legislating the use of technology in the electoral process with particular emphasis on the biometrics, voter register, electronic voting, electronic collation and transmission of results.
The following day, during a public hearing, Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, also charged the National Assembly on the passage of the electoral law, saying INEC is anxious to know the legal framework to govern the conduct of the 2023 general elections.
While we are excited by today's public hearing, I would like to reiterate our appeal to the National Assembly for the expeditious passage of the Electoral Offences Commission Bill and the pending review of the electoral legal framework generally. We are confident that NAS will conclude work on the legal framework in earnest.
Now, finally, let's take a look at all the happenings in the past legislative week, one of which is the proposed constitution amendment to create special seats for women in the National Assembly and state houses of assembly. But let's begin with the resumed protest by legislative aides at the National Assembly.
Legislative aides in the National Assembly on Wednesday resumed their protest, which was suspended last week after promises by the leadership of the National Assembly. The protesting aides say they met with the clerk 2 weeks ago and were promised to be paid in 2 weeks, which elapsed on the 27th of April. The aides carried out the protest while plenary continued uninterrupted in both chambers of the National Assembly.
All they keep saying is that they do not have money, and that's the most annoying part. Why would they not have money that was duly appropriated and released on first-line charge? That is the annoying part. So we are here because, like the 20 months that have gone by, we are still going through the same sequence of sufferings they subjected us to by refusing to pay this money. So we're not going to leave. Like I have kept saying, we will not leave until we are paid. And we're going to sustain this protest for the coming days until we start to receive a lot.
Meanwhile, ahead of the constitution review by the National Assembly, there have been repeated calls for amendments which will encourage women participation in politics. To further push the amendment, the Deputy Minority Whip of the House of Representatives leads the debate for a bill to create additional special seats for women in the National Assembly and state houses of assembly. The bill proposes 2 additional members of the House of Representatives from each state and the Federal Capital Territory, who shall be women, and 1 additional senator from each state and the Federal Capital Territory, who shall be a woman. Concerned that the situation is worse at the state houses of assembly level, where a good number of states do not have a single woman in their state assembly, the House has proposed an amended Section 91, which states that a state house of assembly shall consist of 3 or 4 times the number of seats which that state has in the House of Representatives, and 1 additional member from each of the 3 senatorial districts in the state who shall be a woman. Women have only 4.4% representation in the 9th National Assembly, and Nigeria is identified as one of the countries with the least representation of women in parliament. The bill is unanimously supported by the lawmakers. Meanwhile, speaking to journalists after plenary, the lead sponsor of the bill highlights some of the major intendments of the bill.
Other countries have made this concerted effort to think outside the box. How will it work? And I believe that this is the only way it will work in this country, because you have a lot of people that you agree with something on principle, and then the next day people talk to them and they change their mind. So, but if it's law, and I can tell you that the president have directed some ministers to liaise with parliament to see that women are included. And so we are lobbying everybody to make sure that this one passes. So the issue of party not being able to field anybody, party A doesn't want to field a woman, party B will field.
The lawmakers are proposing that the amendment should commence after the current life of the National Assembly and be reviewed after 16 months. Meanwhile, during Thursday's plenary of the week in the House of Representatives, a motion to address the scarcity of international passport booklets at immigration offices is raised. Lawmakers are worried that the passport gap is causing great harm to Nigerians.
The House should also note that Nigerians who are on medical referrals outside the country are developing endless health complications while waiting for their passports to be issued. Also concerned that Nigerians in the diaspora are experiencing undue delays due to the scarcity, and the situation is fast breeding a class of passport racketeers.
Meanwhile, just like the Senate, the House considered and approved the federal government's external borrowing plan, but wants details of the loans.
Approved the external borrowing plan of $1.5 million and 995 million euros. 2, that the terms and conditions of the loan from each lender as contained in a duly executed loan agreement be forwarded to the National Assembly for proper documentation.
The House also passed the budget for the Nigerian Customs Service and approved the revenue target of 1.678 trillion naira for the service for the 2021 fiscal year.
The committee considered the initial target of 1.6 trillion inadequate and as such increased it to 1.678 trillion based on the following factors. The target for 2021 fiscal year is less than 1.62 trillion collected by Nigeria Customs Service in 2020.
Standing committee. The House of Representatives is concerned about safety in public and private institutions across the country and warns against breach of extant safety standards. Chairman, House of Representatives on Safety Standards and Regulations, Ibrahim Hamza, gave the assurance in Abuja during the committee's inaugural meeting, which coincides with the World Day for Safety and Health at Work.
As members of this important committee, we are enjoying to see ourselves as safety leaders who would exhibit personal safety behaviors, follow safety protocols, and also inspire others to do same. Furthermore, with the caliber of distinguished members carefully selected as pioneer members of this committee, I am confident that we will fashion out additional legislative ways and means to innovate safety as seen in other climes.
The Senate has passed 2 bills to establish 2 federal universities in Kogi State. They are the Federal University of Education, Ankpa, and the Federal University of Agriculture, Kaba. Speaking in an interview with journalists, the sponsor of the bill, Senator Smart Adeyemi, said the establishment of Federal University of Agriculture, Kaba, would help develop and offer academic and professional programs.
While we are running or we are encouraging specialized universities, effort must be made to ensure that we have universities in the field of science and technology on one hand and in the field of agriculture, so that we can have produce that can be exported, cash crop that will be exported, that will complement whatever other resources that we have in order to make us a productive country, a nation, and strengthen our currency.
Well, that's the Gavel this week. Thanks for watching. Do remember to send feedback to the Gavel at channelstv.com. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.